In the glow of a bustling starport on Europa, Captain Nyla Voss is ready to embark on her next mission. Known for her calm precision and strategic mind, she's not easily flustered. Until now. Her assignment: escorting Dr. Kiran Solin, a reclusive scientist whose recent breakthrough has attracted unwanted attention from both human and alien factions. The corridors of the Europa starport buzz with activity. Traders and travelers from various worlds scurry around, but Nyla's attention is fixed on the docking bay entrance. She checks her gear, her fingers grazing the hilt of her energy blaster. This mission is different. There's something off. The sound of footsteps snaps her focus to the entrance. Dr. Kiran Solin steps out, looking out of place amidst the chaos. Tall and lean, with a sharp gaze that seems to cut through the noise, Solin's presence commands an eerie calm. Dressed in a plain black suit, he blends into the shadows, but there's an unmistakable aura around him, one that hints at the secrets he carries. Nyla approaches, her stance confident but wary. "Dr. Solin, I'm Captain Nyla Voss. I'll be your security detail." Solin's gaze shifts to her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Captain Voss, I hope you're ready for an interesting journey." Nyla's brow furrows. Interesting how? Before he can respond, an alert blares across the starport. Red lights flash, and a robotic voice echoes through the corridors. "Security breach detected. Unauthorized personnel in Docking Bay 7. Nyla's instincts kick in. "Stay close," she orders, moving swiftly as she scans for threats. Her mind races, piecing together the little information she has. Whoever wants Solin must have tracked him here, and they're not planning to negotiate. Suddenly, two figures emerge from the shadows, their movements fluid and synchronized. Their skin shimmers with a metallic sheen, their eyes a deep, unnatural violet. Nyla has seen this species before, the Kaltorians, known for their stealth and unmatched combat skills. They don't come cheap. One of the Kaltorians speaks, voice cold and mechanical. "Dr. Solin, surrender, and we promise a swift departure." Nyla steps forward, blocking their path. Not a chance. The Kaltorians exchange glances, and in a blink, they attack. Nyla's training kicks in as she fires her blaster, the beam crackling through the air. The Kaltorians dodge with inhuman agility, one of them closing in on Solin. "Get down." Nyla shouts, throwing herself in front of Solin as a plasma blade swipes dangerously close. She counters with a precise strike, catching the assailant off guard and forcing them back. Solin watches, unflinching, as if this isn't his first brush with death. Nyla notices and wonders, just how much does he know? The skirmish intensifies, and Nyla's focus narrows. The second Kaltorian lunges, and she pivots, using her blaster to deflect the incoming blow. With swift movements, she fires again, finally landing a direct hit. The Kaltorian collapses, sparking faintly before going still. Breathing heavily, she turns to Solin. "We need to get out. Now." Solin nods, unfazed. "I agree, Captain, but this is only the beginning." As they make their way to the secure transport shuttle, Nyla can't shake the feeling that she's stepped into a web far more complex than she anticipated. And as for Dr. Solin, he's hiding something powerful enough to attract the most dangerous forces in the galaxy. The transport shuttle cuts through Europa's atmosphere, leaking behind the chaotic starport. Nyla settles into the cockpit, her gaze flicking to the display panels as she monitors for any signs of pursuit. Solin sits beside her, his face illuminated by the dim glow of the console. He's calm, too calm, and it only fuels her suspicion. "So," Nyla begins, glancing at him, "are you going to tell me why two Kaltorian assassins just tried to snatch you?" Solin smirks, as if the question amuses him. "Perhaps it's my charming personality." "Not buying it, Doctor," she replies sharply. "I'm risking my life here, so I deserve to know what we're dealing with." He sighs, the faintest flicker of regret crossing his face. "It's not just them. There's an entire syndicate that will stop at nothing to get what I've discovered. They believe I've uncovered the key to," he pauses, choosing his words carefully, "to something they call the Genesis curve." Nyla frowns, unfamiliar with the term. Genesis curve. Solon's eyes flash with a strange intensity. It's a phenomenon theorized to unlock unlimited energy. With it, they could rewrite the laws of physics, reshape entire planets, control the universe's most fundamental forces. Imagine wielding that kind of power. The implications send a chill down her spine. Power like that would attract not only syndicates but governments, militaries, and mercenary factions from all corners of the galaxy. She tightens her grip on the controls. "And you didn't think this was worth mentioning earlier." Solon meets her gaze with a quiet resolve. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." Before she can respond, the console blares a new alarm. Nyla's heart sinks as she reads the display. They're being followed. She scans the radar and spots 3 ships, sleek and unmistakably Kaltorian, closing in fast. "Strap in," Nyla commands, engaging the shuttle's evasive maneuvers. The vessel shudders as she pushes it to its limits, weaving through Europa's craggy terrain. The pursuing ships match her every move, their pilots clearly skilled and relentless. Nyla grits her teeth, her mind racing for a solution. They're outmatched in speed and weaponry, but she has something they don't, an intricate knowledge of Europa's landscape. "Hold on," she mutters, diving the shuttle into a narrow canyon. The rocky walls whip past them as Nyla navigates the treacherous path. One of the Kaltorian ships attempts to follow but misjudges the width, slamming into the canyon wall in a fiery explosion. "Nice move," Solon murmurs, his gaze never leaving the viewport. "Thank me later," Nyla snaps, focusing on the 2 remaining ships. Suddenly, an idea sparks in her mind. "Solon, do you have any countermeasures on board?" He nods, reaching under his seat to pull out a small device. This should emit an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to scramble their systems. Briefly. "Good. When I say so, activate it." The canyon opens into a vast plain scattered with jagged rock formations. Nyla banks sharply, pushing the shuttle into a dizzying spiral, her goal to line up both ships behind her. The Kaltorians take the bait, closing in and readying their weapons. "Now," she shouts. Solon presses the device, and a pulse ripples outward. The pursuing ships stutter, their systems momentarily short-circuited. Nyla seizes the opportunity, spinning the shuttle around and firing a direct blast at the nearest Kaltorian ship. It erupts in a blinding flare, leaving only one pursuer remaining. But the final ship recovers faster than she anticipated, swerving back into position and firing a retaliatory shot. The blast hits their shuttle, sending them into a spiral. Alarms blare as warning lights flash across the console. "Can you stabilize it?" Solon asks, gripping his seat. "I'm trying." Nyla fights the controls, bringing the shuttle back into a stable flight path, but their situation is grim. The last Kaltorian ship is gaining, and their own vessel is heavily damaged. As she prepares for another evasive maneuver, Solon leans over, his voice steady. "There's one last option." Nyla's eyes narrow. "I'm listening." "We initiate a core overload. If we time it right, we can eject just before the explosion. It'll take them out." Her mind reels at the idea. It's risky, and they might not survive the blast, but their odds of escaping otherwise are slim. With a sharp nod, she initiates the core sequence. "Brace yourself," she warns as the countdown begins. The shuttle's core hums, vibrations intensifying with each passing second. At the last possible moment, Nyla triggers the ejection sequence. They're launched out into the void, plummeting toward the ground as the shuttle explodes, engulfing the last Kaltorian ship in a fiery inferno. Their escape pod crashes into the rocky terrain below, and for a moment, all is silent. Nyla's breath catches as she looks over at Solon. He's bruised but conscious, a triumphant glint in his eyes. She can't decide whether to be angry or impressed. "Not bad, Captain," he murmurs. She rolls her eyes, though she can't suppress a grin. "Next time, warn me about the syndicates, the assassins, and the universe-altering discoveries before I sign up." Solon chuckles, his gaze fixed on the smoldering wreckage in the distance. "Consider it a lesson in trust, Captain." But as they survey the aftermath, Nyla feels the weight of his revelation pressing down on her. Whatever they've gotten themselves into, it's far from over. The cold air on Europa bites as Nyla and Solon step out of the damaged escape pod. The barren landscape stretches for miles under the pale, icy light, offering little cover from prying eyes. As they assess their surroundings, Nyla's mind races with questions. The thrill of the recent escape begins to fade, replaced by a simmering frustration. She turns to Solon, unable to hold back. "You've got some explaining to do," she says, crossing her arms. "A scientist with a galaxy-altering discovery, assassins on our tail. This isn't a routine protection detail, Doctor." Solon regards her with a resigned expression, as if he's been preparing for this conversation. "You're right, Captain. It's time you know everything, but we can't talk here." She raises an eyebrow, skeptical. "And where exactly do you propose we go?" He gestures toward a distant cliffside, a faint glint visible along its edge. "There's an abandoned research outpost nearby. It should offer us some shelter and privacy." Reluctantly, Nyla follows him, keeping her blaster ready. They walk in tense silence, boots crunching over the icy terrain. After what feels like an eternity, they reach the outpost, a small rusted structure half buried in snow and ice. Solon enters a series of codes, and with a creak, the door slides open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, Nyla finds the remnants of old research equipment scattered across tables, dust and frost coating everything in sight. Solon powers up a console, its screen flickering to life with data. He turns to her, the usual calm replaced by a solemn intensity. "Before I tell you more, I need you to understand something," he begins. "What I've discovered, it's not just about power. It's about evolution. Humanity's next step." Nyla narrows her eyes, trying to read his expression. "What do you mean?" Solon leans forward, his gaze locked on hers. "The Genesis curve isn't just a theoretical energy source. It's a shift in the very nature of life, a pathway to unlock dormant potentials within every human. Enhanced perception, longevity, maybe even abilities beyond what we thought possible. It would make us nearly godlike." Nyla feels a shiver, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. "And you kept this from everyone?" He nods, a hint of regret in his voice. "I tried to keep it safe, but others found out. The Kaltorians, mercenary syndicates, even factions within our own government. They see it as a weapon, a means to control. That's why I reached out to the Stellar Security Corps, to protect this knowledge from those who would misuse it." Nyla exhales, processing his revelation. If what he's saying is true, the Genesis curve could change everything. Power structures, economies, even the way people viewed humanity itself. But it also explained why they were being hunted so ruthlessly. "Why did you keep it hidden for so long?" she asks, her voice softer now. "Because once it's out, there's no going back." Solon's expression darkens, and I'm not sure humanity is ready for that kind of power. Just then, the console beeps, breaking the silence. Solon glances at the screen, his face going pale. "They've found us." Nyla tenses, pulling her blaster from its holster. "How long do we have?" "Minutes. They're not far from the outpost. It seems our little escape trick only delayed them." He begins tapping rapidly on the console, pulling up various screens and charts. "What are you doing?" she asks, eyeing him warily. "Setting up a security measure. If they get through the doors, this entire outpost will detonate. They'll have nothing but rubble to sift through." She stares at him, stunned. "Are you insane? That'll kill us too." He meets her gaze, his eyes steady. There are some things worth dying for, Captain. Protecting humanity's future is one of them. Nyla's mind races. She wasn't ready to become a martyr. Not yet. There has to be another way. Solon pauses, considering. There's a signal beacon just outside. If we can activate it, we might be able to call for backup. Then let's go, she says, her determination renewed. They slip outside, the cold biting deeper now as the sound of distant engines grows louder. Nyla leads the way to the beacon, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. Solon quickly accesses the control panel, fingers moving deftly over the frozen keys. Hurry, she whispers, her breath visible in the chill air. Finally, the beacon lights up, sending out a faint, pulsing signal. Solon gives her a nod. It's done. Now we wait and hope someone picks up. But as they turn to the outpost, a chilling voice echoes across the icy expanse. Well, well, isn't this a touching scene? Nyla and Solon spin around to find a group of Kaltorians, their figures emerging from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with a predatory light. Their leader, a tall figure with intricate metallic armor and a long serrated blade, steps forward. You should have surrendered, Doctor, he sneers. You've caused us quite a bit of trouble. Nyla steps in front of Solon, her stance defiant. If you want him, you'll have to get through me. The leader laughs, a low, sinister sound. Oh, I plan to. Without warning, he lunges and Nyla's reflexes kick in. She fires, but the Kaltorian sidesteps, closing the distance with blinding speed. She barely manages to dodge his blade, countering with a kick that forces him back. Solon stands his ground, watching as Nyla fights, his expression tense. The other Kaltorians circle them, watching like predators assessing their prey. Nyla knows they're outnumbered, but she refuses to back down. She blocks another strike, her blaster firing in a rapid arc, clipping one of the assailants. In the midst of the chaos, the beacon pulses again, its signal reaching farther than before. As the fight rages on, a distant hum fills the air, growing louder by the second. The Kaltorian leader notices, his eyes narrowing as he realizes what's happening. What did you do? He snarls, glaring at Solon. Solon meets his gaze, unafraid. Bought us some time. Suddenly, a powerful blast shakes the ground, and a squad of stellar security corps ships descend, weapons aimed at the Kaltorians. The leader curses, motioning for his team to retreat. One by one, the Kaltorians vanish into the shadows, leaving Nyla and Solon behind as the corps soldiers secure the area. Relief floods Nyla as she lowers her blaster, her muscles aching from the fight. Solon glances at her, gratitude in his eyes. You were willing to fight for this, even without knowing the full truth, he says quietly. She shrugs, wiping the sweat from her brow. Let's just say I have a soft spot for lost causes. He chuckles, but his face quickly turns serious. This was just the beginning, Captain. They won't stop. Nyla nods, the weight of the situation settling over her. She knows he's right. The pursuit, the syndicates, the secrets of the Genesis curve. This was far from over. And as much as she wanted to walk away, something told her that this mission was only going to get more dangerous from here. Back aboard a stellar security corps vessel, Nyla and Solon finally have a moment to catch their breath. The hum of the ship's engine creates a steady backdrop as they settle into the briefing room. The captain of the corps squadron, a grizzled officer named Commander Revik, stands before them with an appraising gaze. Captain Voss, Dr. Solon, Revik greets, his tone clipped but respectful. You two have stirred up quite a storm. We intercepted your distress signal and found you just in time. Nyla nods, still on edge. We're grateful, Commander, but we're far from safe. Revik's eyes narrowed as he shifts his gaze to Solon. Dr. Solon, I'd like to know exactly why we just risked Corps resources to pull you out of that mess. I read the intel, but it doesn't explain everything. This Genesis curve, what exactly are we dealing with? Solon leans forward, his tone measured. The Genesis curve is more than just a discovery. It's a breakthrough that could potentially transform humanity, make us stronger, smarter, even grant us abilities we never thought possible. Revik lets out a low whistle, absorbing the gravity of Solon's words. You're saying this is a permanent change. Not just technology, but a genetic enhancement. Exactly, Solon replies. But it's incredibly risky, which is why I kept it hidden. If it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. Nyla can see Revik's expression shift as he calculates the risks and benefits. She feels a surge of protectiveness for Solon. She's seen firsthand what some people are willing to do for power, and this discovery would only amplify that. Commander, Nyla interjects, we need to get to a secure location. The Kaltorians aren't the only ones after this technology. Solon's breakthrough has already drawn attention from powerful forces across the galaxy. Revik nods slowly. Understood. We'll take you to an undisclosed core facility. It's off the main routes, so we'll have a better chance of keeping you safe. As the ship changes course, Nyla glances at Solon, sensing his discomfort. Is there something you're not telling us, Doctor? Solon hesitates before responding, his voice lower than before. There's one more thing. The Genesis curve isn't just about enhancement. It taps into a type of energy that, until now, we thought was mythological, a kind of dark matter resonance. In the wrong conditions, it could become unstable. Nyla's pulse quickens. Unstable how? Enough to rip through the fabric of space-time. Solon admits, it's why I was so careful in my research. I've only unlocked a fraction of its potential, but those who don't understand its dangers won't hesitate to exploit it. A tense silence falls over the room, broken only by the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Commander Revik's expression hardens as he turns to Nyla. Captain, your mission has changed, he says grimly. Your priority now is to ensure Dr. Solon's safety at all costs. I'll deploy additional security, but I have a feeling we're dealing with forces beyond what we faced before. The journey to the hidden court facility is tense but uneventful. Nyla stays close to Solon, alert to any sign of danger. As they approach the facility, a sense of dread settles over her. The stakes of their mission have just escalated, and she can't shake the feeling that they're heading into a storm they're unprepared for. The facility itself is hidden within the dense asteroid belt around Jupiter, a fortress built into the largest asteroid for maximum security and minimal detection. Armed guards and security drones line the perimeter as they dock, the crew members casting wary glances at Solon. Word of his discovery has spread, and with it, an unspoken tension that hangs thick in the air. Inside the facility, Nyla and Solon are assigned to a private wing, guarded by elite corps soldiers. Nyla inspects the quarters, checking for any weak points in security. She's not taking any chances, not with the stakes this high. Later, in the quiet of their quarters, Solon finally speaks. Thank you, Captain. Nyla looks at him, surprised. For what? For trusting me. Most people wouldn't have taken the risk. You could have handed me over to the syndicates or walked away. She shrugs, her voice softened by fatigue. I guess I have a thing for impossible missions. Solon chuckles, but his expression quickly turns serious. Nyla, I know I've put you in danger, but I believe in the potential of the Genesis curve. If we manage this right, it could change the universe. Before Nyla can respond, an alarm blares through the quarters. A voice comes over the intercom, tense and urgent. Security breach detected. Hostiles in Sector 7. Nyla springs to her feet, pulling her blaster as she listens to the announcements. Unauthorized vessels approaching the perimeter. All personnel, prepare for immediate defense. Nyla's eyes meet Solon's. Looks like they found us. They exit the quarters and are met by a squad of corps soldiers. Commander Revik's voice crackles over their comms. Captain Voss, the facility is under attack. Kaltorian mercenaries and unknown allies. We're coordinating defensive measures, but it's going to be a tough fight. Nyla grits her teeth, her heart pounding as they navigate the narrow corridors toward the control room. Get Solon to safety. We can't let him fall into their hands. The soldiers close ranks around Solon, escorting him toward a secure chamber at the facility's core. Nyla splits off, heading toward the main control room to join Revik. The sounds of battle echo through the halls as explosions shake the walls, and Nyla knows they're running out of time. When she reaches the control room, Revik is coordinating defensive measures with his team, his face a mask of focus and resolve. He acknowledges her with a nod. "Captain, we're under siege. Kaltorians and—" He hesitates, his voice thick with disbelief. "A faction we didn't anticipate. Human mercenaries, hired by an unknown party." Human mercenaries. Nyla's mind races. The implications are troubling. If human forces are also involved, this is more than just a rogue alien faction. This is a coordinated effort, likely funded by someone with considerable resources. Revik hands her a tactical tablet. "They're attacking from multiple entry points. We're holding them off for now, but we need to secure Dr. Solon and evacuate. We can't let them get their hands on the Genesis curve." Nyla nods, her jaw set with determination. "I'll head to Solon and oversee the evacuation. Keep the corridors clear." With a final nod, she charges back down the hallway, her blaster drawn and senses heightened. The facility shakes again, an explosion echoing through the walls. The air is thick with tension as she reaches Solon's chamber, finding him guarded by the core squad. "Dr. Solon, we're getting you out of here," she says, her voice firm. "This place won't hold much longer." Solon's face is grim, but he nods, following her as they make their way through the facility toward the emergency escape pods. The sound of blaster fire echoes in the distance, and Nyla quickens her pace, hyper-aware of every movement around them. They reach the escape pod bay, where a corps technician waits, prepping the pods for launch. But just as they approach, a shadowy figure steps into their path. A Kaltorian mercenary, his armor gleaming and eyes fixed on Solon. "Going somewhere, Doctor." The mercenary sneers, raising his weapon. Nyla steps forward, positioning herself between Solon and the mercenary. "Back off." The mercenary chuckles darkly. "You really think you can protect him? You have no idea what you're dealing with." Nyla doesn't hesitate. In one swift motion, she raises her blaster and fires, the shot catching the mercenary off guard. He stumbles back, and she lunges forward, her movements fluid and precise as she disarms him and takes him down. As the mercenary collapses, she turns to Solon. "Get in the pod. Now." Solon scrambles into the pod, and Nyla quickly joins him, slamming the hatch shut as the escape pod's engines fire up. Through the viewport, she catches a final glimpse of the facility, still under siege as it disappears from view. They're safe for now. But as they drift away from the chaos, Nyla knows that their enemies won't stop until they've claimed the Genesis curve. The escape pod drifts silently through space, the stars gleaming like distant beacons against the vast, dark void. Nyla and Solon sit in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts as the adrenaline from their escape begins to fade. The threat of Kaltorians and mercenaries still lingers heavily, but the realization that human forces have joined the hunt adds a new layer of unease. Finally, Solon breaks the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, I'm sorry." Nyla glances at him, a hardened edge in her gaze. "You're sorry. You unleashed something into the galaxy that half the known factions want to control. You put us all in danger." He nods, his face shadowed with guilt. "I didn't anticipate it would come to this. I thought, if I could understand the Genesis curve better, I could safeguard it, keep it from being misused." She shakes her head, unable to hide her frustration. "Well, you underestimated the lengths people would go for power, Doctor. And now, it's not just you they're after. It's anyone willing to protect you. People like me, like the core soldiers who risked their lives back there." Solon looks down, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her words. I never wanted anyone to get hurt, Captain. I believe that humanity might finally be ready for something more. Maybe one day we will be, Nyla says, her tone softening. But that day isn't today. Suddenly, a soft beeping sound fills the escape pod. Nyla glances at the navigation panel, frowning. We've got an incoming transmission. She activates the screen, and a familiar face appears. Commander Revik. His image is distorted by static, but there's no mistaking the grim set of his expression. Captain Voss, Dr. Solon, he says, his voice urgent. We managed to repel the attackers at the facility, but we've discovered something alarming. The mercenaries were hired by a rogue faction within our own government. Nyla's eyes widen, a sinking feeling settling in her stomach. Our own government. Revik nods, his jaw clenched. Yes, they've been after the Genesis curve for their own purposes, likely to gain an advantage over other interstellar powers. They're using human mercenaries to cover their tracks and avoid implicating official forces. Whoever is orchestrating this is high up and has access to vast resources. Nyla glances at Solon, whose face is etched with horror. He whispers, I knew there would be interest, but from within our own ranks. Revik continues, his tone heavy. I'm transmitting coordinates for a secure hideout on Titan's moon. It's off the grid, and only a handful of trusted allies know about it. You'll be safe there while we try to expose this faction and buy you some time. Nyla nods, feeling the weight of the new revelation. Understood, Commander. We'll head there immediately. Revik's image flickers as he gives them a final nod. Be careful, Captain. If they're willing to betray the corps to get their hands on the Genesis curve, they won't stop until they have it. The screen goes dark, and the silence in the pod feels heavier than before. Nyla sets the coordinates for Titan, her mind racing. This mission had started as a simple escort, but now it was spiraling into a galaxy-spanning conspiracy. As they approach Titan, the rough terrain of the moon looms below, and the hideout comes into view. An isolated facility nestled within rocky caverns, shielded from scans and prying eyes. Nyla guides the pod down, landing on a narrow outcrop, and they step out, greeted by the cold, thin air and eerie silence. Inside, the hideout is sparse but secure, stocked with basic supplies and surveillance equipment. Solon quickly sets up his console, and Nyla watches as he pulls up data, his fingers flying over the keys. Are you planning to keep working on the Genesis curve here? She asks, wary. Solon hesitates, then nods. Yes, but only to figure out a way to neutralize it. If I can create a failsafe, something to prevent anyone from harnessing its power, I might be able to end this pursuit. Nyla crosses her arms, considering his words. Can you really do that? Solon's gaze hardens with determination. I have to. It's the only way to keep the Genesis curve from becoming a weapon. They settle into a tense routine, with Nyla keeping watch and Solon buried in his research. Days pass, each one filled with a growing sense of unease. Nyla's instincts tell her that something is off, that their enemies are closer than they think. Her suspicions are confirmed one night when an unfamiliar sound pierces the silence of the hideout. The faint hum of an approaching vessel, masked but unmistakable. Nyla's heart races as she springs into action, alerting Solon and pulling out her blaster. Stay here, she commands, her tone leaving no room for argument. I'll check it out. She slips outside, moving through the shadows to the edge of the landing area. The moon's barren landscape stretches around her, but in the distance, she spots a figure moving stealthily across the rocky terrain. The figure's outline shimmers faintly, advanced cloaking tech. Nyla's grip on her blaster tightens as she moves to intercept. But as she approaches, the figure turns, and she catches a glimpse of their face, a familiar one. Commander Revik. Commander, she whispers, confusion warring with suspicion. What are you doing here? Revik's face is a mask of regret. Captain Voss. I had no choice. The realization hits her like a blow. You led them here. Revik's shoulders slump, his voice filled with anguish. They threatened my family, Nyla. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill them. I had no other option. Before Nyla can respond, another sound cuts through the stillness, the unmistakable whine of Kaltorian ships approaching. Revik glances back, his face twisted with shame. They're here. They'll kill us all if we resist. Nyla stares at him, feeling a mix of betrayal and pity. You could have told me. We could have found a way. Revik shakes his head, his eyes hollow. They would have hunted me down. They control everything, Nyla, even the corpse. With a grim resolve, Nyla raises her blaster, her voice a whisper. Then I guess we're both out of options. A flicker of understanding passes between them, a silent acknowledgement of the impossible choices they've been forced to make. But before they can act, the Kaltorians land, their ships casting a dark shadow over the moon's rocky surface. Armed mercenaries pour out, their weapons trained on Nyla and Revik. Drop your weapons, the lead Kaltorian commands, his voice cold and mechanical. Nyla hesitates, her mind racing with escape plans, but she knows they're outnumbered, surrounded, and any resistance would be futile. Reluctantly, she drops her blaster, watching as Revik does the same. The Kaltorian leader approaches, a menacing grin on his face. Finally, the doctor and his precious Genesis curve. Once we have him, the galaxy will be ours to shape. Nyla grits her teeth, but she holds her tongue, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of seeing her anger. The Kaltorians move forward, ready to storm the hideout and capture Solon. But just as all seems lost, an unexpected figure appears at the hideout entrance, Solon himself, standing defiantly, something small and metallic clutched in his hand. The Kaltorian leader laughs. And what do you plan to do, Doctor? Surrender quietly. Solon raises the device, his expression resolute. This is a containment module I developed. It's designed to overload the Genesis curve's energy, neutralizing it, and taking down anyone who tries to claim it. A stunned silence falls over the Kaltorians. Nyla feels a surge of hope, but also fear. She can see the intensity in Solon's eyes. He's willing to sacrifice himself to end this once and for all. The Kaltorian leader sneers. You wouldn't dare. Solon's gaze doesn't waver. Try me. In that moment, Nyla makes her decision. She lunges forward, grabbing her blaster from the ground and taking advantage of the Kaltorians' distraction. She fires, striking two of the mercenaries and creating enough chaos to push back against the attackers. Revik, caught between his loyalty and his fear, finally snaps into action, joining Nyla in the fight against their shared enemy. The skirmish is intense, but Solon's presence with the containment module keeps the Kaltorians at bay, each of them wary of the potential consequences. As the dust settles, the Kaltorians retreat, unwilling to risk their lives for a prize they can't control. Solon lowers the module, exhaustion etched into his face. Nyla and Revik stand beside him, their trust tenuously restored. But as they look out over the moon's barren landscape, they know that the battle for the Genesis curve is far from over. Back inside the hideout, a tense silence hangs between Nyla, Solon, and Revik. Each of them bears the scars, physical and emotional, of the recent skirmish. Nyla's gaze is cold as she faces Revik, her anger barely contained. You betrayed us, Commander. Sold us out to those monsters. And now you expect us to trust you. Nyla's voice is hard, and the words cut like a blade. Revik looks away, shame etched into every line on his face. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm here now, and I'll help you see this through, whatever it takes. Solon steps forward, placing a steadying hand on Nyla's shoulder. Captain, we don't have the luxury of choosing our allies right now. Revik has knowledge of the Corps' inner workings and their connections to this rogue faction. If we're going to stop them, We need him. Nyla's jaw clenches as she meets Solin's gaze. Reluctantly, she nods, though her trust in Revik remains fractured. Revik clears his throat, shifting uncomfortably. The rogue faction has a base on Enceladus, Saturn's moon. It's well hidden, shielded from typical scans. I've only been there once, but I know the way. That's where they're coordinating efforts to capture the Genesis curve. Nyla's mind races as she processes the information. Enceladus. Remote, icy, and dangerous. It's the perfect hiding spot for a covert operation. And what's their plan if they manage to get their hands on it? Revik's face darkens. They plan to weaponize it, creating an energy-based arsenal that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Think mass destruction, but with pinpoint control. They can disable entire fleets, raise cities, bring nations to their knees. Solon pales, the enormity of the potential destruction sinking in. We can't let them reach that point. If they succeed, the galaxy will fall into an age of tyranny and control. The Genesis curve was meant to elevate humanity, not destroy it. Nyla straightens, her resolve hardening. Then we take the fight to them. If Enceladus is where they're hiding, that's where we'll go. Revik nods, his expression grim. I'll help you navigate the base, but be warned. It's heavily guarded. The security systems alone are enough to keep even the most seasoned soldiers out. Good thing we're not your average soldiers, Nyla retorts, a steely glint in her eyes. After a quick refuel and resupply, they board a small, stealth-equipped shuttle that Revik secured from his core contacts. As they blast off from Titan, an uneasy camaraderie forms between them, forged by necessity. Nyla takes the controls, piloting them toward Saturn's orbit with Solon and Revik seated behind her, checking their weapons and equipment. As Enceladus comes into view, its icy surface glimmering against the black of space, Nyla feels a chill run through her, not from the cold, but from the gravity of what they're about to face. She guides the shuttle down, skimming over the frozen plains before finally setting down near an entrance Revik points out. A hidden access tunnel built directly into the moon's crust. The moment they step out, the biting cold of Enceladus grits them. They move swiftly, keeping to the shadows as Revik leads them through the winding tunnels. Their breaths create clouds of mist as they pass through narrow corridors, walls lined with frost and faintly glowing with security lights. The silence is oppressive, each footstep amplified in the empty stillness. Revik halts, holding up a hand to signal a stop. He motions to a security console embedded in the wall. We're close. Beyond this door is the heart of the base. Security will be tight, and once we're inside, we'll have limited time before they realize we're here. Nyla nods, and Solon positions himself by the door, his hand on the containment module, ready for whatever lies ahead. What's our plan once we're in? Solon asks, his voice tense but determined. We split up, Nyla says. Solon, your priority is to reach the main console and initiate the data purge. If we can erase their research and prototypes on the Genesis curve, it'll buy us time. And what about you? He asks, concern flickering in his eyes. I'll be creating a distraction. They'll be too busy trying to stop me to notice you. Nyla replies with a wry smile. Besides, I'm the best shot you have. Revik takes a deep breath, nodding. I'll go with Solon and guide him to the console. It's hidden in a lab deep within the base. They exchange a final look, each silently acknowledging the risks, then move into position. Nyla waits until Revik hacks the door, and then, as it slides open, they spring into action. Inside, the base hums with life. Scientists and guards moving purposefully through the sterile metallic corridors, oblivious to the imminent threat. Nyla moves like a shadow, slipping past guards and into the security hub. She quickly disables the cameras and sets off a series of silent alarms in other areas of the base, diverting the guards' attention. Meanwhile, Revik and Solon make their way to the lab, moving through the maze-like corridors. They reach the console room just as Nyla's diversions take effect. The guards rush past, responding to the false alarms, leaving the lab largely unguarded. Solon steps up to the console, fingers flying over the controls as he accesses the data on the Genesis curve. He initiates the purge sequence, wiping months of research and data from the system. A progress bar fills on the screen as the files disappear one by one, erasing any trace of the rogue faction's work. But before the process is complete, a voice echoes through the room. Step away from the console. They turn to see a tall figure framed in the doorway. A man with a cold, calculating expression, dressed in the insignia of a high-ranking government official. Solon's heart sinks. He recognizes the man. Director Kale, the mastermind behind the rogue faction. Kale steps forward, his eyes gleaming with ruthless ambition. Dr. Solon, I have to admit, you've made things difficult. But did you really think you could destroy something as powerful as the Genesis curve? Solon squares his shoulders, refusing to back down. The Genesis curve wasn't meant to be a weapon. You'll only bring devastation. Kel sneers. Devastation? No, Doctor. This is evolution. A new world order, one where the strong rule and the weak, well, they'll simply fall in line. Revik steps protectively in front of Solon, his voice defiant. You're delusional, Kale. You've betrayed everything the Corps stands for. Kale laughs, a cold, hollow sound. The Corps is just a tool, like any other. And tools are meant to be used by those who know how to wield them. Nyla's voice crackles over their comms. Solon, Revik, do you read me? What's happening? Revik taps his comm, whispering urgently. It's Kale. He found us. We're compromised. Nyla's voice sharpens. Hold tight. I'm coming to you. But Kale isn't about to let them wait for help. He raises a hand, and a squad of armed guards files into the room, weapons trained on Solon and Revik. Take them, Kale commands. Revik braces himself, ready for a fight, but Solon steps forward, hands raised. No need for violence, Kale. I'll go with you, on one condition. Kale raises an eyebrow, intrigued. And what condition is that? Solon glances at Revik, his gaze fierce with determination. Let him go. He had nothing to do with this. It's me you want. Kale considers, a smirk playing on his lips. Very well, Doctor. Your friend can go free. But you'll come with me now. Before Revik can protest, Solon steps forward, surrendering to the guards as they bind his wrists. Kale turns and nods at Revik. Go. Tell your captain to stop playing games, or she'll lose more than just her mission. As they lead Solon away, Revik stands frozen, watching his friend disappear down the corridor. His comm crackles, Nyla's voice filled with desperation. Revik, what happened? Where's Solon? Revik takes a shuddering breath. He sacrificed himself. He's buying us time. Silence fills the comm as Nyla absorbs the news. When she finally speaks, her voice is hard, steely with determination. Then we're not leaving without him. Stay where you are. I'm coming for both of you. The comm goes silent, and Revik feels a flicker of hope. Nyla isn't giving up, and neither will he. Together, they'll fight to bring Solon back and end this nightmare once and for all. As Nyla navigates the icy corridors of Enceladus's hidden base, a fierce resolve hardens within her. Solon's sacrifice isn't one she can accept, not after everything they've been through. She moves swiftly, silently, her blaster at the ready as she makes her way to the lab where Revik awaits. The base's alarms blare as guards mobilize, no doubt preparing for any resistance she and Revik might put up. She finally reaches Revik, who stands by the console with a grim expression. He looks up, relief flickering in his eyes as she approaches. He went with them, Revik says, frustration evident in his voice. Kale took him. He's planning to extract the Genesis curve's formula directly from Solon. Nyla clenches her fists, fury sparking through her veins. Then we don't have much time. Do you know where Cal would take him? Revik nods, his expression dark. There's a high-security research chamber deep within the base. It's shielded, but if we move quickly, we can intercept them before Cal begins the extraction. They set off together, moving through the labyrinthine corridors. Nyla's senses are on high alert, her movements precise as they dodge patrols and bypass security checkpoints. Revik leads the way, his knowledge of the base proving invaluable as they edge closer to the inner sanctum. Finally, they reach a massive set of doors leading to the high-security chamber. Revik accesses a hidden panel, typing in a series of override codes. The doors slide open, revealing a cold, sterile room filled with towering equipment and harsh, white lights. In the center, strapped to a high-tech chair, is Solon, his face pale but determined. Across from him stands Cal, a cruel smile on his lips. "Ah, Captain Voss," Cal drawls, turning to face them. "I was wondering when you'd show up. You're too late. The Genesis curve will be ours, and with it, we'll bring this galaxy to heel." Nyla raises her blaster, her stance unyielding. "Let him go, Cal. You don't understand the power you're trying to control." Cal chuckles, his expression mocking. "I understand it perfectly, and it's humanity's destiny to wield it, to rise above petty morals and weak ideals." With a slight movement, Cal presses a button, and a barrier of energy fields springs up around Solon's chair. Nyla and Revik are cut off, unable to reach him as Cal smirks. "I would advise against any rash actions," Cal sneers. "One wrong move, and this containment field will collapse, along with Dr. Solon." Nyla's mind races, searching for a solution. But before she can act, Solon speaks, his voice surprisingly calm despite the danger he faces. "Cal, you might control this base, but you don't control the Genesis curve," Solon says, his gaze steady. "It's a power beyond you, one that cannot be harnessed by force." Cal scoffs. "You'd be surprised what can be achieved with enough willpower, Doctor." As Cal begins the extraction sequence, Solon's face tightens with concentration. Nyla notices something, a subtle glow emanating from Solon's wrist, where the containment module he's been carrying is strapped. Realization dawns on her. Solon has a backup plan. "Solon," she whispers, hoping he can hear her. "What are you doing?" He glances at her, his eyes filled with a fierce resolve. "This isn't just a containment module, Nyla. It's a failsafe. I've configured it to overload if anyone tries to forcibly extract the Genesis curve. It'll destabilize, creating an energy pulse strong enough to neutralize the entire base." Nyla's breath catches. "That'll kill you." Solon nods, his expression resolute. "I know, but it's the only way to keep this power out of Cal's hands. Humanity's future can't be decided by those who seek control at any cost." Cal, unaware of the impending danger, sneers as he continues with the extraction process. But the glow from Solon's containment module intensifies, and the room begins to hum with a growing energy. The lights flicker, and the equipment around them trembles as the pulse builds. "Revik," Nyla hisses, her voice barely audible. "We need to shut down the power source for this chamber. It's the only way to deactivate the energy field around Solon." Revik nods, quickly scanning the room and locating a control panel. With a swift motion, he moves to the panel, hacking into the system, while Nyla keeps her blaster trained on Cal, who remains oblivious to the danger. As Revik disables the power, the containment field around Solon's chair flickers and dies. Nyla seizes the moment, lunging forward and pulling Solon out of the chair just as the containment module reaches critical mass. The three of them sprint toward the exit, leaving Cal behind as the equipment around him begins to overload. Cal's face twists with rage as he realizes what's happening. "You fools, you'll destroy everything." Nyla doesn't look back as they race through the corridors, the hum of the energy pulse growing louder, filling the base with an ominous vibration. They'd reach the docking bay, throwing themselves into the nearest escape vessel as the pulse builds to a crescendo. The vessel launches, rocketing away from Enceladus's surface just as the energy pulse detonates. A blinding light engulfs the base, its force radiating outward in a shockwave that ripples through space. Nyla shields her eyes, watching as the base is consumed, disappearing into a brilliant flash, before fading into the cold emptiness of space. Inside the ship, silence falls. Nyla turns to Solon, relief flooding her as she sees that he's safe, though visibly shaken. Revik sits across from them, his face a mix of exhaustion and grim satisfaction. Solon finally breaks the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's over." Nyla nods, a small tired smile on her face. "For now. But you know as well as I do that power like this always finds a way to resurface." Solon meets her gaze, understanding in his eyes. "Then we'll be there to stop it when it does." Revik, leaning back with a weary sigh, adds, "Consider me in too. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost." As the ship drifts away from the remnants of the rogue faction's base, Nyla feels a strange sense of peace settle over her. They've stopped Kale and prevented a galactic catastrophe, at least for now. Humanity's future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. As long as there are people willing to protect it, the galaxy will have defenders. Nyla glances at Solon, a new respect blossoming between them. They've faced the impossible, risking everything for a belief in a future free from tyranny and control. And as they set their course for home, she knows this isn't the end of their journey, only the beginning of a new alliance forged in trust, resilience, and the unbreakable will to protect humanity's future.